Hi, I'm Terry Cooke. You're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. Welcome back. It's a pleasure to be here. About a month ago, we had a remarkable ribbon-cutting, unveiling opening of something called the Serafini Family Splash and Ice Pad at the Bernie Morelli Center, adjacent to the new Bernie Custis High School. And it's a legacy contribution from an extraordinary multi-generational Hamilton family to a neighborhood that they landed in a long time ago. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the show Lou Serafini Jr., who's the president and CEO of Fengate Asset Management. As always, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to put on the record right here that the Serafini family, starting with Lou's dad, Lou Sr., have been personal friends of mine for 35 years. I've been a corporate director with a related company, and I have followed with, I think, great interest the development of one of Canada's great companies. And so not only have you been philanthropic and given back to the community you started in, but the Fengate story is a remarkable one. So, Lou, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here. Appreciate it.
Talk to me a little bit about the early days and how your dad and your mom came here, how we got started in business, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the development into one of Canada's 50 best managed companies and a company that does business structured finance and asset management and infrastructure around the world. How did that happen from a humble beginning in Hamilton, Ontario?
Yeah, well, it's a story with, like many immigrant stories, it's a story about firsts. My father came here when he was young, 1956. He was a young boy, hardworking family. His father was a laborer making sidewalks. His mother worked and cooked, and from a very young age developed a work ethic. From there, I think his first job was at the Royal Connaught Hotel.
As a busboy.
As a busboy,
yep.
Yeah. Talk about coincidences. One of his bartenders was a guy named Ed, who many years later, maybe 12, he ends up marrying Ed's sister after meeting her on a blind date, and that's my mom, Rosita.
Gotta love that.
So she came here when she was in their mid-20s. Again, hardworking, just to make ends meet. She worked at Consumers Glass. She was a seamstress, and very big struggle at the beginning. My dad did many odd jobs. He worked as a plumber. He worked as a mechanic. He served 3 years in the Canadian Navy, and eventually got involved in real estate, and he was coaxed by a waiter that he worked with at the Connaught, who was another Italian family, Hamilton roots, who did very well in real estate development. And in 1974, Fengate was born.
And the early stage, as I understand it, was a group of smaller investors who couldn't on their own find the resources to buy small properties, but collectively figured out a way to do that.
So they started in 1974 by acquiring some properties, and there was strength in numbers. So it was basically his friends from the Italian community, Sam the cheese man, Nardini the butcher, and they scraped up whatever savings they had, and they started to buy some commercial properties. And over a period of 20 years, did well, accumulated some assets, and that actually ended up becoming our first fund called Northgate Properties, which went on to great success. So I can't imagine how it was back in the 70s with all these people who are working hard, trying to make ends meet, wanted a better education for their kids, so they had to save all of that. They wanted a house. They came from Italian heritage, which means they didn't want any debt, and they still could come up with some money to make some savings. And that's really how it started.
And we're going to get to the point in which you joined the company in a little bit. But the move into larger scale property development and especially affordable housing, that was the point at which I met your dad, because I was managing a startup housing project for young quadriplegics, and we made a partnership at St. John's Place.
That's right. So that was about 1981. The government had come out with a affordable housing program, and he had met another famous Hamiltonian named Enrico Mancinelli, who was running LiUNA. And what was created was LiUNA Hamilton Association. At the same time, he brought the idea to the Italian community, and that was the first formation of the Sons of Italy Hamilton Housing Corporation. And that's really where he developed his expertise to buy, develop, and how to administer a government program. That ended up having tremendous growth from 81 all the way to about 95 when the program changed.
Yeah.
And, probably 2,000 units were developed in communities around Hamilton, Niagara Falls, Brantford, all providing affordable housing and other services related to housing for those that needed it in our community.
We should acknowledge that Enrico, the late Enrico Mancinelli's son, Joe, went on to do some pretty important things.
Absolutely.
And continues to be a significant partner and both leader in this community, but labor leader across North America, and partner with Fengate in a whole bunch of both local and international projects.
That's true. That's true.
So
That's true.
not bad. So let's talk about multi-generation family businesses, because in the work I do at the foundation, I deal with lots of them. I've, in fact, run a family business for a period of my career. They're complicated. Oftentimes, founders have difficulty relinquishing control and allowing the next generation to fulfill their aspirations. My observation is that your dad is one of the most remarkable leaders in that he exacted everything he could out of his abilities and drove the business to a point at which it was clearly successful and growing, but then knew that to take the business to the next level, he had to step aside and accommodate your leadership. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, if you work backwards, the hardest thing he did was let go.
Right.
Many people say they can do that. It's a harder thing to do. I think what was important, though, from my father's perspective, is that he could distinguish the difference between pride and skill. His pride would be that his son could take over, but he also knew that you had to have a skill set. So he created some rules for me before I joined the family business. One was I had to go get my own job and get an education, and I had to qualify for it.
Yep.
So I went to McMaster, I did my MBA, I became a banker, I had 8 years of banking experience, and then and only then did we talk about what could you do if you come work here, because this is going to be yours one day.
And let's talk about what you found and the pivot in the business that has kind of opened the kind of doors that and the field of play that you now exist on, which is very different than in the earlier iterations.
Yeah, we were located downtown Hamilton on Emerald Street and King, and it was a tough environment. The neighborhood had gotten really in poor condition, and we were managing a lot of affordable housing, we're managing a lot of condominiums, and when I came from a banking world, I said, there's a lot of brain damage here for the return on what we're putting in. And, we just had a moment to reflect on what is it we wanted to do. And, this is 1995, 1996 now. And it was funny that what happened is we made this decision that we're going to come back to where our roots were, which is in commercial real estate, and those properties that my father had purchased with his friends in the community. And we spent about 3 years formulating a plan to create our first fund. And that fund was a commercial real estate investment fund. And what we said we're going to do there is manage money where we have expertise. And that's really where our real estate began. Where we got a bit lucky is that we had a good relationship with investors, and we were reasonably intelligent, and we weren't afraid to work hard. The lucky part was a pension plan gave us our first shot in 2002, and it wasn't much money for them at the time, but we invested it, and we invested it well. And that's really when we started the trek into asset management in alternative sector.
And we should say that was the Leuna Pension
Absolutely,
Fund,
yeah.
harkening back to
That's
relationships that dated back to your dad and Enrico
That's correct,
Mancinelli's
yeah.
generation, but that had carried forward
That's right.
and that injected both credibility and capital to allow you to take the business to the next step.
And I benefited from the foresight of Enrico's son, Joseph, who just felt that you could do things different. Stepping outside your comfort zone is how you achieve progress. And he was the one who really said, we should be using the strategy of investing in real estate as a way to protect ourselves from the volatility of the equity markets. And, I said, we can make that happen for you. And that was really the first one. The second big moment happened by chance. Our banker was a banker with a large Canadian construction company, Ellis Don, who said, how would you like to get involved in public-private partnerships? And I said, Absolutely. What is that? And I had no idea what he was talking about, but he was involved in the first project in Ontario, and that was private sector standards and deployment to take on risk that governments typically took, and that was at Brampton Civic General. Mm-hmm. We got involved. We learned very quickly that it was not easy, but we went on for about a 5-year period where we had very little competition. We attracted new pension clients, and these pension plans just loved it. Their workers were working on the site. They were investing in essential infrastructure that was helping a community, and the returns were acceptable for the risk that we're taking. And that's really, if I were to define an inflection point, where Fengate really went in a new direction at that moment.
We're at a point of taking a break. We should acknowledge again that this isn't the Joe Mancinelli fan club, but I always say he's the most progressive labor leader in the country that I'd been exposed to. And unfortunately, the mayor that we never had in Hamilton, because he ran a political campaign or two for me, and also a brilliant political mind.
Absolutely.
We're going to come back and talk, first of all, a little bit about what Fengate is doing now in the world. And then I want to talk about the giving back and why in your old neighborhood you wanted to leave a legacy for family and for company success. I'm with Lou Serafini Jr. from Fengate Asset Management. You're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
The Hamilton Bengals are gearing up for the 2019 Ontario Junior B Lacrosse League season, and Cable 14 is your home for all the action on Thursday nights.
The one-timers tonight.
Coverage starts Thursday, May 2nd at 8 p.m. when the St. Catharines Spartans come to town to take on the Bengals in their home opener at the Dave.
On net scores!
For the full Hamilton Bengals OJBLL broadcast schedule, visit cable14.com.
I started playing softball when I was 4 years old. I loved it because it was all about having fun with my friends. And it still is.
From little kids to adults to seniors, softball is a sport for everyone. Join us.
I'm Terry Cooke. You're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs, and we're back. I'm with Lou Serafini Jr., the president and CEO of Fengate Asset Management. I already made my declarations of historic friendship and board relationships earlier. Let's talk a little bit about what Fengate looks like today and the kind of projects that you're involved with, the depth of the team that you've assembled, and a little bit about your approach to talent, because I think, in essence, any good company really is a reflection of the culture established by its leader.
Sure. So, I mean, after we got our first taste of what public-private partnerships looked like, we played in a space that was uncompeted with the large pension plans in Canada. So there became a solution for medium-sized pension plans to access this market of alternative assets. And there were a lot of real estate solutions, but no infrastructure solutions. We made a couple strategic choices at that time, which were correct, which is we would also play in renewable power space, that we would aim to serve the contractors who we felt were important to deliver on these assets. And then our clients bought in, and they had a high level of trust when we had a very little track record. And if you fast forward that story, we would have completed now 37 projects in Canada, the U.S. We do have some international assets as well, and valued at close to $14 billion. And the team just feels very good about it. One is you have to have a high specialty in finance and what you're doing, but it feels good when you go and you finance a hospital, or you deliver on a road, or you deliver on a mental health facility. There's some pride on the impact that you make in these communities.
And it's also highly competitive and very expensive to bid. So it's not as if you're now competing in a vacuum with few competitors, right?
No, I have to tell you is that the barriers to entry are quite high. And at the beginning days, my dad looked at me in the financials, said, son, do you know what you're doing?
Yeah, you've bet the farm here.
You've bet the farm here. I said, I don't know, but I know when I'm 60, I don't want to ask myself what happened if we tried.
Right.
So we had a good plan, we had great partners, and we got lucky. Our clients grew enough so that we could fund all these developments. And from there, we just developed great relationships in pretty much in every province. And this business now is North American, but every province was then getting into how does that work? How do P3s work? Which led to an easy entry in the U.S. as well, because a lot of the models that you're seeing now in submarkets in the U.S. were modeled after Ontario and British Columbia.
Right.
So all of a sudden, these big, huge companies are calling us because we're the experts in the field.
So take a couple of examples. You talked about hospitals earlier, but what other kind of out of the comfort zone stuff have you done nationally and internationally that would provide examples of where you've built infrastructure?
Yeah, so I mean, in energy plants, we would have a significant renewable power, solar panels. We have wind. A project that we're quite proud of is one in BC, a run-of-river project.
Yeah.
On the infrastructure side, some have had some challenges. CAMH is one, though, that is important to us.
Yep.
What that facility delivers to the community is quite impressive.
Yeah.
Across Canada, we've done quite a bit of hospital work. We've done some road work. We're working on projects in Ontario that serve courthouses. We're involved in the Toronto South Detention Center. And basically anything that comes out or gets procured through government, we're usually there. If we're not there, it's for a reason.
Okay, last business question before we turn to philanthropy and what
Sure.
you've done in Hamilton. Tell me a little bit about the culture of the company and what you've tried to create.
So, I started by hiring people to do the work I didn't want to do. And that was easy. That was an easy way to calculate return. Then I started, hiring people that were smarter than me. That was really easy to do. But then from there, you become more like a general manager where you're trying to find the right pieces and the right positions, and you spend most of your time making sure it works together. That's a lot more challenging, but many people do it well. Where we are right now, it's about creating a culture of care. And that care has to be a two-way street. So a lot of our business decisions mean, where do we go next? We're always growing. So growth is a principle that we believe in. And it's not because you can make more money or you diversify your risk. It's because we need to keep enough young people around, keep them excited, so that there's longevity in their careers. We do a lot to, make sure that they have the same values as us, but then we do a lot to give them clarity on what their future could look like. So if you're here for 10 years, this is the potential you can reach. And if we lose people after we've done that happens. And usually I'm good with it if they're making decisions that are better for themselves. And if you have that attitude, the culture works, and it's a winning culture. And you see it in sports teams everywhere. You see why are some teams better than others all the time?
Yeah.
And it comes down to an attitude, really.
And why is he able to just plug and play with people who are lower cost, not household names, where other teams can have marquee talent that doesn't seem to fit together and
Absolutely.
work
Just to compare, though, we don't take any shortcuts. We don't deflate any footballs or anything like that.
Point taken.
Okay.
Okay, I want to now come full circle because you're now a well-dressed guy that travels in international business corridors that would seem remarkable to a kid whose family landed in North End, Hamilton a long time ago. And a month ago, they're going to put up on the screen the opening of the Serafini Family splash pad and ice rink, which is just a fantastic return to a community. I should also say that you and your family have been very generous to the Community Foundation and supported a whole host of causes over the last decade at least. And part of this gift is not only the naming, which recognizes a family history in that neighborhood, but also a $700,000 fund to support access to recreation for low-income kids. Yeah. So I want to just hear a little bit about your experience remaining connected to a place that you haven't lived in for a long time, having a sense of wanting to make a contribution back, and any reflections you have on what Hamilton gave you and why you continue to want to make a difference here.
Well, it's a city that's very dear to my heart. It's my hometown. And when I hear the stories that my parents tell me about how we grew up, and they're sad, and And if I go back to my memories, they're happy. And I just said there is a disconnect. So when you start to look at why, you just wake up one day and it feels good to do good. So you try to solve it. I remember as a kid, my grandmother lived on Mars Avenue.
Yep.
And I remember at the opening we were talking about, that's across the street from the old Studebaker plant. I had to look at my kids and they're saying, is that vegan?
Right.
What kind of plant is that? But I remember as a kid walking around that neighborhood, going to the corner store for an ice cream, seeing the barber around the corner, and we were allowed to walk freely and roam and just come home when it gets dark.
Yep.
And I think that's been lost, and it was really the Jane Jacobs essence of what a neighborhood should look like. Then when I worked in this neighborhood, I don't remember the neighborhood where my Uncle Robert and my cousins lived and my grandmother lived. I just saw it falling apart, really. And Bernie Morelli was a frequent visitor to our office, and he'd come in for espressos and just say, what happened here?
Yep.
We talk about what was required, and I can't increase police presence, and I can't do any of those things, but we can do something.
Yeah. And social capital is a big part of it.
And it really is for us. And you know what? We didn't want to make it about giving money. A few years ago, we found at a holiday party that the people that were employed by Fengate, they want to be part of something proud. And it's not just a job for them, and it's not just about money. It's about feeling a sense of belonging. And I said, we're going to prove to you, who are our most important assets, that we have a conscience. And we're going to demonstrate a sense of community. And we're going to demonstrate it with more than a checkbook. We're going to try to make a difference in the only way we know how, in a small way. So, the first recreation fund that we did was, again, to target kids and communities. Yeah. And we got very structured and organized on how we did that. So Kiwanis Boys and Girls Club was one of the first recipients. And it's just amazing when you go down there and see
the work they're doing.
Yeah. And if this helps in a small way, it sure makes us feel good to help them.
So the day that we did the announcement and the official opening, you both had your 3 daughters there and your mom and dad. And I just want you to reflect upon that.
It was an amazing feeling. Parents are proud of their kids no matter how old they are. And my parents were very proud that day. They saw that neighborhood. My mom used to take me for swimming lessons at Jimmy Thompson Pool. I learned to skate on an outdoor rink at Scott Park that the firemen would take the hose and freeze the baseball field.
While you were freezing your ass off.
Well, it was very cold back then. Climate change has had an effect. I remember the people parking in our lawn for the Ticat games, and it took me till I was in high school to figure out what Oski Wee Wee meant. So it was just very pleasant memories. And then I felt a responsibility for my 3 girls, say, let's remember where we came from, and we're in a position of comfort, but that's not a privilege, that's a responsibility. And I want to demonstrate to them that, and young people in general, that we have to do something. We did something special. We did a mission trip to Kenya. It was life-changing for them. Watching how young people who don't have the privilege of education and healthcare and community, it's impossible to survive. So when it starts to develop in your own neighborhood where you grew up, we just felt it was time to do something about it.
Thank you. Sadly, we're out of time, but what a great history. What a great present. Lou Serafini, first of all, I'm proud of our long relationship. I'm also proud of the work that you and your dad and your family have done both in this community and in creating jobs and prosperity across the country. And you've done that globally, but you've never forgotten your roots in Hamilton. And for that, I'm grateful. And on behalf of a grateful Community Foundation and a grateful Hamilton, that was a special day. And the legacy of the fund for kids that will change lives will live on long after you and I are no longer in these chairs. So thanks for being with us today. Thanks for your time, and continued success and good luck.
My pleasure. Thank you. Very kind.
I'm Terry Cooke. You've been watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. My guest has been Lou Serafini Jr., the President and CEO of Fengate Asset Management. As always, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We look forward to being back with you next month. Over and out.